Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Today, we are looking at Notebuilder Advanced. Again, this is actually the second in a series of Notebuilder webinars. So you may have seen that we recently broadcast an introduction to Notebuilder Advanced. The recording of that session is available on our knowledge base and on our YouTube channel. If you weren't able to attend, this is an intermediate session. So this is following on from the introduction that you had in the previous session and taking a slightly deeper dive into calculations and things like that. So my name's Tom Jeffrey. I'm one of the education and media technicians at CaseWare UK, and I'm joined by Phil Reeves, one of our EMT consultants. Phil's going to be taking you through the presentation. I will be on hand to monitor your questions as they come in, and I can put those to Phil. We've also got a Q&A session. We've allotted some time for a Q&A session at the end as well. In terms of your questions, you can submit those using the Zoom toolbar. So you've got the desktop and mobile looks slightly different, but you've got the Q&A option there for submitting your questions. And I'll see those, as I say, I'll put those to Phil when I can. If we don't get back to you during the session, don't worry, we will put your questions into a Q&A document, which we'll publish on the knowledge base. And we'll also get back to you directly with an answer to your question. Keep an eye out in the chat field as well. We are going to be sharing a handout, or we're going to attempt to share a handout. If you don't see that pop up in there, then let us know and we can provide it either directly to you, or we can have another go at putting it in the chat. That's a PDF. If you wanted to ask your question live via your microphone, you've also got the raise hand option there. So you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you, and then you can ask your question live. We are recording, so that will go on, the recording of this session will go on the knowledge base and on YouTube in the next couple of days. So I'll pass over to Phil. Hi, Phil.
Hello.
Hello,
Tom.
I'll hand over to you now, and then we'll have a look at the agenda.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, guys, thank you for attending today's webinar. Hopefully you should be able to see the agenda. So yeah, we're going to start with a recap. A very, very brief recap of the introductory session. Obviously, a recording is available on YouTube, so you can watch that if you want to see the full session. We're then going to look at advanced calculations. A lot of this webinar is going to be based around the calculations aspect and how we can better utilize that to pull elements, not just from, as we saw in the first session, the mapping and inserting figures, but also how we can pull it through from other areas of the financial statements. We're going to look at some again, briefly, advanced configuration options, utilizing text sections, and then just again, how we can add that content into the financial statements. Plenty of time for a Q&A at the end. Always like to answer any live questions that you guys have. So we're going to, again, just with a recap of the introductory session, going to jump into CaseWare working papers. So you should see that loading on your screen now. So in terms of CaseWare working papers, the only thing, or just want to obviously highlight how we can access the Notebuilder tool. So we can access that via the digital dashboard by selecting Other Docs and Notebuilder on the right-hand side. We can type into the search bar at the top, Notebuilder, or we can go into our CaseWare financial statements, and we can use the Create button here. So if I go to Create, then that will allow me again to create the Notebuilder. Now, again, in the introductory webinar, we went through in quite a lot of detail the different buttons that you've got available at the top of the screen. So we went through the KL options, profiles, how we insert user text, page breaks, titles, financial statement notes. Again, we're going to touch on some of these areas again as we go through, but we're going to focus specifically on, as I say, some more advanced aspects of the software. Now, for today's session, we're going to base our note that we're going to create on a couple of suggestions that we had during or as a result of the introductory session, and also ones that we see quite often within training. So we're going to base our note today on key performance indicators. So obviously a table that's often found within the strategic report, but the tools and the methods and the options that we're going to select today can be used across any note that you need to create on or any custom content that you may need to create for your set of financial statements. So I'm just going to go into profiles, and as we saw in the introductory session, we go profiles and we can load in existing profiles. We can delete a profile that's already been loaded into the file. We can save a profile. We can add a new profile in. All notes that you start with will look very similarly. You'll get your 2 columns and your 2 rows. So we can go to profiles. We can go to load. And as you should hopefully all see every time you open up the Note Builder, at least the 8 default layouts and profiles that are provided by CaseWare. So we've got obviously the fixed asset note, group and company, SOCI, sofa styles. But the one we're going to use today is the CaseWare 2-column standard table layout. So we get a current year and a prior year column, as you can see here. Now, in terms of this particular table, what we also want to do, or what I want to do in this example, is add in a 3rd column. So I can go to configure to do this. So configure from the toolbar. We have the option here to insert delete columns. I'm going to click column B, and I'm just going to insert another column. Obviously, this will all come into, or the reason why will come into, or be under, or will come clear in a moment. But when we create a new column, what it does is copies the properties of the column that we've selected. So because I selected column B, when I create a new column, it creates a complete copy of that column. So as you can see now, column C is exactly the same as column B. Now in this instance, I want my column C to be at the end, so I can drag and drop that in at the end. So it's just a case of dragging. You get the arrow icons, which just indicate where that particular column is going to appear. So where it will be to the right of where we insert it. So if I was to put it on here, or sorry, on the left-hand side of that, on the left of there, on the left of there, or right at the end, obviously to the left of that arrow. Just going to confirm that and confirm again. So at this stage, we've got 3 columns. We've got our headers column, sorry, our row description column on the left-hand side. Now, what we're essentially going to look to produce on our key performance indicators table is a current year, a prior year, and then some form of comparative analytical review column that will show the difference between the current and prior year. Everything we can do, and at no point today am I going to type in any of these figures. I'm not using a calculator at all to calculate these figures. I'm going to use completely the calculations that are available within CaseWare and the functionality within the Note Builder tool. And so first thing I want to do is, obviously this column is going to be for percentages, but we're using a pound sign. So I might want to just go in quickly and just change some of these heading descriptions. So I can go to calculations. And I'm just going to quickly make a couple of changes to the calculations. Go continue. I'm going to go, so we're going to type in this, call this our difference column for now. Remembering that when if we put in a calculation, just to make sure we put it in the speech marks, again, something we covered in the introductory session, to make sure that text pulls through. And then what we're also going to do is, instead of having a pound sign, we're just going to change that to be a percentage sign. So again, making sure we put that within the speech marks. So when I confirm this, it applies my changes. So just to make it clear, obviously it's unlikely you guys are actually going to put the word difference in, but just to make that clear for today's webinar, that is what we're including in this particular column. So the key performance indicators we're going to include today will be revenue. We're going to have our operating profit. We're going to have our net assets. And then we're going to include one final one, a net profit margin. And again, everything we're going to calculate here is going to be done via the Note Builder tool, using the information available in a Note Builder and also the figures that are already within the account. So again, just to quickly recap what we did in the first webinar to get the revenue figures through, we can go to our calculation button on the toolbar, as we've already seen, which will allow us to amend the calculation of any cell within our Note Builder tool. And again, just to highlight that there's a slight difference between calculations and configures in that when you go into the calculation tool, you can only select a single cell, whereas when we go into configuration, we can select multiple cells at the same time. Main reason for that is so that you can only change one calculation at a time. Obviously, it may be that if you wanted the same calculation on 2 rows, then obviously you can insert a row the same way we did with the columns, and that will repeat the properties of that particular row. What we want to do is just pick up our revenue for the current and prior year. So I'll go to the confirm button, which shows us all our different or various different map codes, different map levels. So I can go to our cell number. Hopefully you guys are aware, and I'm sure you are, that the L codes contain our turnover figures. I'm going to use sales for this example. Click the current year, and we're just going to confirm that we want to add that to the cell. Now that will add in our YR0, L01. We want all of the turnover in this particular row. So what we'll do is just remove L01. So we'll have L followed by the asterisk, which means that CaseWare will pick up anything on that particular L code. So anything that's attached to L, so whether it's sales, rent receivable, commission receivable, the different L codes that you can have, anything that's on there will pick up in this particular row. And I'm just going to repeat that for my prior year. So again, I'll just get rid of L01, change it to just L, followed by the asterisk to make sure it picks up everything within the L codes. And if I just quickly confirm that, you can see that pulling through. Now, again, as we saw in the introductory webinar, we may also want to make this so that the figures appear in positive, which is something we can do quite easily within the configuration options. So I can go to configure table. I can go to confirm. Oh, sorry, I want to make sure I select both current and prior year, then go to confirm, and then I'll just flip the values here. Obviously, flipping the values, anything that's negative will appear in positive. Click confirm to save that. So it's all, again, pretty straightforward. You're just using the calculation button to pick out the calculations and the map numbers that we want to include. Where we can get a little bit more technical is when we're trying to determine our difference in terms of obviously a percentage. So we want the percentage rise from this figure to this figure throughout the year. Now, again, to do this, the calculation field isn't just for picking up map numbers. We have a calculation bar at the top of, at the bottom of this screen that we can type our calculations into in the same way that I did this. So I put the percentage sign within the speech marks to get that to pull through. I can actually create calculations within this field to be able to calculate, in this case, the percentage change between the current and prior year. And the way to do that is first I need to determine what cells I'm actually using to create this calculation. So I want to make use of B4. So again, a bit like a game of battleships, B and 4 and C4, again, similar to Excel. We're just making sure we know the cells that we're using to create this calculation. We go to confirm. And all I want to do is basically put in a calculation to work out that percentage increase. So I'm going to go, obviously, to open brackets. Then we go, so we'll go current year, which is our B4. We're going to subtract C4, close the bracket, divide that by C4, close the bracket again, and then just get the percentage with times by 100. And we'll confirm that. And as you can see, that will come through with our 5%. Again, if you want to bust out a calculator and work that out, then feel free to. Now, what we might want to do in this case is go, well, actually, we want to show that in a bit more detail, maybe include some decimal places in there. Just to say, because 5%, if the figure's rounded up, it could be as low as 4.5. If the figure's rounding down, it could be as high as 5.49. So what we want to do, again, we might want to include a little bit more detail in there. So what we, if I go to the configure button, and just select my percentage cell here, go to confirm. We have the option here to include decimal places. Now you can see at the moment that that is selecting as not applicable. And the reason for that is that the format group on the left-hand side that we can see here is set to multi-col, which means that CaseWare will pick up in this particular cell the decimal place settings from the financial statements. So in this cell, if the financial statements are set to 1 decimal place, then this cell will have 1 decimal place. If it's set to 2, then it'll have 2 decimal places. But what we want to do is separate this from the rest of the financial statements. So regardless of whether our accounts are in have decimal places, we always want this cell to include a decimal. So the way we can do that is to change our format group to none. So we go to the format group, set it to none. We go to the decimal place drop down now, and you can see it's set to 0, and we can now set it to 1 or 2. If I set it to 2 and click confirm, you can see it now shows that that's 5.12%. So again, a little bit more information is being provided in there just by including that element of the decimal places. So that is quite a simple calculation, but it's knowing that you have that option available within the Notebuilder tool. Using the calculations as we've done, all we've really done is subtracted the current year from the prior year, divided obviously that by the prior year, and then times it by 100 to get the percentage. And that we can use that element again when we come down to the net profit margin. We're going to follow that same sort of process, but using a slightly different method. Now, when we get to the reason why the method is different with the net profit margin is because we can use cells within the financial statements to populate rows within the Notebuilder tool. So we're not just going to use calculation. We're not just going to use map numbers. We're not going to type the figures in for the operating profit. We're actually going to pull this figure in from where it is already located within the financial statements. So if I go to the accounts and open up my accounts document, as I'm sure you're already aware of in the statement of comprehensive income, we already have the operating profit available. So to make sure that my information is pulling through consistently throughout my accounts, both on this note that's going to be included in the strategic report and within the statement, essentially what I can do is copy the calculation or copy the cell number for this cell into my Notebuilder note. And to do that, I can go to Tools and I can go to Tech Information to locate the cell number for the operating profit. And as we can see here, that's the cell number is always the first line, so it's OC2.F23. And all I'd essentially do is make a note of that, and I'm going to use that to populate my Notebuilder note. Obviously, I also want to make a note of the prior year, so I click on the prior year, go Tech Information, and also make a note of that prior year. Obviously, the benefits of this is that we don't have to go through in our calculation field on the Notebuilder and find the turnover figure and then subtract the cost of sales and then subtract any expenses just to get the operating profit. We're just going straight into the operating profit and we're pinching that figure from its current location in the financial statements. So we found that our cell number. Remember also that the cell number is specific to that particular, no cell number will be the same in the account. So OC2F23, as I think it was, will pull through every time into, or will always be this particular cell within the accounts. So we don't have to worry about there being another OC2F23 within our financial statements. So I'm going to go to calculation. From here, I can go to confirm, and then I can type in our calculation. So OC2F23, go back to table configure, and go to 2020 OC2I23. And then I just confirm that. Now, when I confirm that, you're going to see that nothing appears in the Notebuilder tool. And another misconception that users in some circumstances have when they're using the Note Builder tool is they'll use this process. They'll find the cell number within the accounts. They'll put it into their Note Builder. And then because it doesn't automatically populate, there's suddenly an instance of, oh, I don't know, is that right? Oh, why is it not pulling through? That's the correct cell number. They'll go back, they'll check it. They'll come back into Note Builder. They'll find out it's correct. And then, oh, why is that not pulling through? That particular cell is available in the accounts, but doesn't exist at the moment in the Notebuilder Advanced tool. Within the Notebuilder, what we see here is what is available in this Notebuilder. They're a separate application from the accounts. So that cell number doesn't exist in Notebuilder, but when we go into the accounts, when we build this into the financial statements, then that cell will then exist. Obviously, if I want to, I can work out my percentage difference in the same way I did with the difference column, but we've seen that already, so we won't go through that again. Same with the net assets. We can go down to our financial statements, jump into our accounts, we go to the balance sheet, and we just use the tech information button to locate the cell number. So BS1, E37, and BS1, G37. So I just make a note of those, jump back into the Notebuilder tool, go into calculations, and I'm just going to use those same calculations, BS1, E37, and then I'll just do the prior year as well. Click confirm. There we go. Now, what we can do for the net profit margin is use a mixture of what we've got in the Notebuilder and what we've got in the accounts to determine the net profit margin for the period. So again, we're utilizing the existing cells within the within the accounts and the cells that are within the Notebuilder to work out this particular figure. So I'll go into my accounts again, just locate my profit for the year, go to my tech information, I'll make a note of that cell. So we've got OC2 F43. And then I go back into the Notebuilder. And what I'm going to use in this calculation example is we're going to use a formula. Obviously, the net profit is the net profit margin, net profit divided by revenue. So we're going to go into calculation. And we're going to use a mixture between that cell calculation that we got from the accounts and a cell within this Notebuilder, essentially is B4 cell. So we can go to the calculation and we can go, okay, so we want OC2, put that in capital so it looks the way, it's not case sensitive in any way, just looks the way it does in the financial statements. And I'm going to divide that by B4, which is our cell within this set of accounts, within this Notebuilder tool, and I'll times that by 100. So you can see it's straightforward to do. We're incorporating a cell within the accounts, we're incorporating a cell within this particular table, and we're essentially calculating our net profit margin. Obviously, if I wanted to, I could make B4 the map number, but just to make sure it's consistent with the revenue figure I've got in this note, I can just use B4 instead. And then all I'm going to do is copy that for the prior year, and then we're going to go, really should have made a note of the prior I, and then we'll do C4 and confirm that. So again, that particular figure won't pull through automatically because of the fact that we have used a cell that doesn't exist within the Notebuilder tool. We'll just put a percentage there so that we know this particular row is a percentage. Obviously, with the percentage, we may also want to affect that format group so that we can have this coming through with a bit more detail. We include in percentages. So just go to confirm, and we're just going to go switch to multi-column as we did previously to none, and we'll change the decimals to 2 decimal places and just confirm that. Now, as I've said a number of times, that these cells will pull through when we build them into the financial statements. So let's actually see that in action now. So if I go to KL and save this, I'm going to save it as key performance indicators, and I'm going to click OK. That will save this note into the C drive, into my file library path. So within C, program files, 86, CaseWare resources, knowledge library, custom, and within that custom folder is going to be my key performance indicators. This path is useful in case you need to distribute this note to other users within your firm. So I'm going to go to the accounts, and I'm going to build this particular note in. So I'll go up to my key or financial key performance indicators. I click on the note here. And before I build this, or before I have the option to build that particular note in, I will need to just take a quick knowledge library update. So I go to KL updates, click yes. And I just take a quick update to the toolbar. If you're worried about taking updates to the toolbar, to make sure that you can get that note into the accounts, you can also close and reopen the financial statements. Obviously, for this demonstration, it'd be a lot quicker for me just to take a quick update to the toolbar. The update is simply required so that when we go to the note tab and we go to the option to build the note in, that it's actually appearing within the options. We need to update the options within the accounts to include the new custom note. So go to note. We go to add. We go to user defined, and we can see custom note builder key performance indicators. And we can load that in. So it's always within the add button, always within user defined, and we can see our note builder note here. So as you can see, our figures are now starting to pull through. One thing we may want to do at this point is just start to look to adjust the alignment of the columns. Obviously, in the strategic report, there's not the same indent, so that's where we can use the options within the table tab to remove the indent if we need to. Now, one thing you should always be aware of is that when you're building a note within a note builder tool, you're actually creating a skeleton that we're building into each file. If you were to make a mistake, or if there was a particular element of the note that needs to be specific to each set of accounts, you don't necessarily have to go back into the note builder, make a change, and then build it back into the file. All the options that we have available within the note builder are also available on the account. So you can see here that I have accidentally pulled through the net assets incorrectly. So I can go to calculation. Actually, I've pulled that through incorrectly. I don't really want to have to build this note back in. You can do this, make these changes within the note builder. So it's the same calculation screen. I put F37, that should have been G. So I make that change on here, go to confirm, and it updates on here. Obviously, at some point, I may want to go back into the note builder and make that same change, but it's just easier to do within the set of accounts rather than having to reload that table back in once you've made that change within the note builder. What I also may want to do is just include decimal places with that. So again, I can go to configure and change the format group to none, and then set that to do 2 decimal places. So it's pretty straightforward to do in terms of bringing that into the accounts. One thing, as I've already said, is if you do make changes on a file that you think, oh, actually, that's going to also need to be applied to another file, or all the other files I'm going to build this note into, then it's worth making those changes again on the note builder tool. So I'll just come back into here. Actually, I'll put this calculation incorrectly. Or incorrectly, sorry. I can go to calculation. And I just go, actually, that should have been G37. And also, I don't want this indent, so I can go to table. Now, the other thing you're going to notice, if I go back into the accounts, is if I went to print preview on this note, that difference column is going to cut down into, or could potentially cut down into another table. So if I just go to here, you can see it's not even including our difference column because of the table alignment. The difference column's over here. It's just not, it doesn't look great. And the reason for that is, as you can see from the green lines on the left, right hand side, we've exceeded the maximum that a table, the maximum table width for a table when it's being built into the financial statements, if we're going to have it as a portrait table. So what we want to do before we can do this in the accounts, we can do this in the note builder, is just minimize most likely this column so that we're able to fit this onto a page quite nicely in the portrait mode. So to do that, we just go to the edit function and we can access enable editing. And you can see here that if I hover in line with this the row description column, I get an arrow icon at the top on the measurement bar, and I can adjust the column width accordingly. Now, the column width that we're looking for is this line just to the left of number 7. That is the maximum width that a table can be when we're building it into the account. So I just drag this to the side so that I'm roughly in line with that last line, and that will then adjust the column width as so. So now if I built this note into the note builder tool, into the financial statements, then it would have the adjusted column width that I've just included so that it all fits nicely within one page. Now, the final element that we're just going to look at today is just how we can better utilize the text entry or user text sections within the financial statements. And also, or within our note builder tool to populate, again, information automatically. So very much the same as the accounts, we have at the top the user text areas. So one, insert user text area before the table, one to insert a user text area after the table. If I wanted to use a text area here to disclose, I don't know, I might want to break down the revenue, then rather than, again, typing the information in, I can better utilize the functionality within the Note Builder tool and within CaseWare to pre-populate those revenue figures. So I can say, I don't know, revenue will be this much. Valued at this much. And sales of services valued at another amount. So obviously I can quite easily type that figure in, but again, if we're applying this to multiple sets of accounts, you want that figure to come through automatically. So what we'll do is, again, go into the editing and enable editing function where we have the option to insert cells. Now, we won't go through the different cells examples in too much detail today. If that's something you guys want to see, then please feel free to drop it in the chat. We can consider having a future webinar on cell creation, or we can send you a link to our existing cell information that's available on our knowledge base. But essentially, we can go through, we can insert a cell. We give our cell number and name. We recommend starting with USX. The reason for that is that is a cell number that doesn't exist within the account. I'm just going to say this is number 1 and click OK. From there, we can then set up the cell type as numeric. We've also can create alphanumeric cells, date cells, but for this instance, we're going to stick with numeric. And just as a quick tip, you want to change your numeric width to be variable. The reason for that is we want the cell to adjust based on the number that's within it. We don't want the cell to be too long. We don't want it to be too small. We want it to be, or as I say, to automatically adjust. So setting it to variable means the cell number will change, the cell size will change based on the number. So we can go to variable, and I'm going to click OK. And as you can see, the cell is available here. Now, at the moment, it's not coming through with anything because we haven't put a calculation in. But what we want to do is populate this from particular map numbers. So I can go to the tools options and I have the option for linkage. Now, again, all the options that we're showing here are also available within the accounts, but it's just to be able to build them with your Notebuilder notes. So we go to linkage and we just locate our L codes. Just move that out of the way. Okay, our L codes. And we would just choose this, the figure that we want to add in. Now, because the map numbers are minus, I'm just going to subtract it in. Obviously, minus and a minus is plus. And actually, my goods includes this one. So L01510001. And it also includes 02. So I can subtract that as well. And you can see at the bottom, the calculation updates based on the information that I've inserted. And then once I'm happy with that, I close it. And that pulls through, and we can see at the top of the screen the calculation that's being included. I'll just take a quick copy of that and repeat the process for my second figure. So again, when I create a second cell, it follows the same properties as the first cell. So go OK, get rid of my X, click on my cell. I'm going to paste that same calculation in. And then we're just going to change this. So this one, we want to be the 03 code. Click enter, and that figure will automatically pull through. And we can just quickly save this by going KL and save. So you can see that we can utilize the Notebuilder tool to create cells that populate from the accounts. We can also use the text sections to be able to pre-populate information based on mapping, which means obviously, and we can also put those cell numbers within there. So where I've populated the operating profit from the operating profit number in the accounts, I can also do that within cells. But we've used that, we've pre-populated the text section quite nicely with cells to be able to automatically pull through that information, so we haven't got to keep updating that. Just before we go, if you are creating a note for the strategic report and the or the director's report, again, as I've already mentioned, we had to reduce the indent on the financial, on the table. We'll also need to reduce the indent on the text section. So to do that, we go back into enable editing. And at the top here, where we've got the style, where it says text standard, IND for indent, IMP for input, we just want to change that. Just get rid of, move that out of the way for a second. Just get rid of, or change the drop down to text standard input, and you can see that reduces the indent. So if you are creating any tables with text sections for the strategic report, or for the director's report, you may want to just change that style to be text standard input so that it doesn't have that same indent that you would get within the notes to the accounts. Now, when I'm saving this quickly, I can go to KO and save. If I just come out of enable editing so we see it in the normal view, go to KO and save. When you do save it, because we've already saved this note the first time, we get the option to save it to the existing knowledge library, which is the key performance indicators knowledge library. If we select yes, it will save it to that knowledge library, so with the updated changes. If we select no, it'll allow us to save it as something else. So if you want some version control, then you may want to save this. I might want to save this as key performance indicators 2, just so it's like a second version. Again, up to you, best policy within your firm. To save it as 2, then obviously I can jump back into the accounts. Again, I'd have to take that knowledge library update, and then I could build that in. We'll just build in quickly so that we can see the difference between the updated version and what we had initially. I'll just take a quick update, go to KL, update and take the update to the toolbar. Click on our key performance indicators. We click the note above where we want to insert it. So because I want to insert it below the key performance indicators, I can just select key performance indicators here, go to the note tab, go to my add button, which will have updated to include my new note, key performance indicators 2. And I can load that in, and we can see, you'll be able to see quite instantly the difference. So now it's a lot neater on the right-hand side compared to what we had previously. Our figures are now pulling through correctly initially. And if I go into print preview, you can see the full result of that note. This is a lot more or a lot cleaner than what we had previously. So actually, I still haven't reduced it enough. But again, we can make those individual changes within the note builder or within the accounts themselves. So I go to enable editing, insert the enable editing password. It's probably only by a few inches. Yeah, so it's just the wrong side of that line. That's my mistake. So I can just reduce that slightly. Don't want to reduce it too far, but that should be fine. Let's check that in print preview. And now you can see now that column comes through. So again, just a good reminder for us to make sure that we have it just to the left-hand side of that particular line. So that the last line just before you get to the 7, just want it just to the left-hand side of that so that it pulls through all the columns correctly. Okay, so wary of the time, I want to make sure we've got plenty of time for any questions. So now I'm going to pass you back to Tom. I believe we've got maybe 4 minutes or so, Tom, for some questions. So fire away.
Thanks, Phil. Yes, so thank you very much for the presentation there. We have got a couple of questions that have come through. You can still submit your questions as we're talking as well while we're still live. If we don't get back to you during the session, we'll get back to you afterwards. The first question that we have is about styles. So if I have 2 accounts which use different firm styles, but I want to use the same Notebuilder note on both, will the note adapt to the different styles automatically?
That is a great question. Something I didn't mention in the webinar, but essentially it will adapt because of the way that the styles pick up. If I go back to the configure option on my Notebuilder screen, and I was just to select any cell, this one will do, go to confirm. You can see here the style that's being picked up, current year figure. So we've got different styles, prior year figures, descriptions, current year dates, current year currency, subheadings. So if I've gone through in my firm style and changed the font of the current year figures to be Times New Roman, or the color of the current year figures to be red, for example, then when this builds in from the Notebuilder into the accounts, it picks up all of those firm styles and applies them to the Notebuilder note. So you can add them to as many different sets of accounts with as many different styles as you want, and it'll always just pick up the style in that set.
Excellent, thanks, Phil. Question just come in: is it also possible to pull the information in the text field from a separate Excel file? So if I'm understanding that question correctly, we've got our Excel integrations where you can bring in an Excel, or you can bring in Excel data. Can we do that within a Notebuilder note?
I am not sure. I will check that one.
It's an excellent question.
It's a great question. There is a webinar on how to interact with Excel. So
yeah, we do cover the integration there. I think we just need to double check the extent to which you can apply those integrations within a Notebuilder note, and then we'll get back to you afterwards.
Without confirming or denying that you can or can't, I would say that if you can do it in case view, what in the financial statements, you should be be able to do it within Notebuilder.
Yeah, I guess my initial thought on that would be that if you're pulling in from an Excel file, of course, if you're sharing a Notebuilder note or a Notebuilder knowledge library, you'd need to make sure that the Excel file that you're pulling from is in a fixed location.
Yeah.
But we'll look into that and we'll get back to you after the session. I think we've just one more question quickly, and then I think we'll move to the wrap up. Is there a fast way to view how a change will look on the accounts without having to close Notebuilder and load the note in every time?
Yes, there is. Again, a great question. If you make the same mistake I made with not making the table narrow enough, as we can see here, let's make that slightly more narrow. I can go to the preview option within Notebuilder, and it will give me an idea roughly of what it looks like in terms of the column widths. If I want to see what it looks like with these rows that aren't being printed at the moment because they're not being populated, then I can use the row button here just to print those rows.
So it's really it's a formatting preview rather than showing you exactly how it's going to populate on the face of the accounts.
Yeah. So obviously you can't see what it looked like depending on where you put it in because it's completely separate from the accounts.
Yeah. Okay, thanks very much, and thank you for your questions. Those will go into a Q&A document with the recording. So if we just jump to the next slide, we've just got a preview there of some of the webinars that we have coming up. There's lots more on the website. We're planning ahead now, I think, as far as March. But if you go to caseware.co.uk/events, you'll see all of our upcoming sessions. You can see the agendas there, register to attend. And in terms of the recordings of those sessions, there's just a reminder there that if you're already browsing around the website, as I'm sure you all do regularly, you can go to the resources tab at the top, and then you have the events option, which is the second one down, to take you to the events page. So our webinars are recorded. As we've mentioned before, those recordings go onto the knowledge base, but they also go onto our client services CaseWare UK Limited YouTube channel. We've got a webinar playlist alongside all of our other playlists, lots and lots of video content on there. So please visit the channel, and if you subscribe and set your notifications, we'll notify you when new videos are added. We also will give you a heads up on new sessions and news within the business on our LinkedIn page, Client Services CaseWare UK Limited. If you'd follow us there, then we'll keep you up to date on there as well. And finally, yes, that's right, I was correct about what slide it was going to be. It's kb.caseware.co.uk for the knowledge base. That's for all your articles, quick vids, webinar recordings, and downloads, if you have access to the download area, of course. So that brings us to the end of the session. Thank you very much for joining us today. We hope you found it useful and enjoyed it. Keep an eye out for the recording and the Q&A document. Take care, and we'll see you on the next webinar.
Cheers, guys.